mocked for his cheap suit. Then he bought the luxury store. Alastair Finch, his lean 72-year-old frame encased in a suit that could only be described as aggressively mediocre, watched the two women across the polished boardroom table. Fiona Albright, still prim and unyielding in her tailored power suit, wore a tight, confused smile. Brenda Sterling, ever the sycophant, mirrored her manager's expression, a flicker of unease in her eyes. The air, thick with the scent of ambition and stale coffee, hummed with an unspoken tension. They believed this was merely a preliminary meeting for the acquisition of Elegance Emporium, a formality before the grand unveiling of its new, illustrious owner. Oh, how delightfully wrong they were. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk played on Alastair's lips, a private amusement at the grand illusion unfolding before him. The anticipation of their impending shock was a rare, exquisite pleasure, a small recompense for the deeper frustrations that had brought him to this very room. "So, Mr. Finch," Fiona began, her voice dripping with an almost condescending patience, a tone that implied he was a slightly dull but necessary inconvenience. "If we could just finalize the last few clauses regarding staff retention, we can move forward. I assure you, Brenda and I have worked tirelessly to prepare the Emporium for this transition. Our dedication to the brand is unparalleled." Her gaze lingered on him, a calculated assessment, as if trying to gauge how much of her practiced flattery he would absorb. Alastair merely inclined his head, the ghost of a smile still playing on his lips. He steepled his fingers, his gaze unblinking, eyes that seemed to pierce through the veneer of corporate politeness. "Staff retention, you say?" His voice, usually a resonant baritone that commanded boardrooms and silenced fashion critics, was now soft, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the room like a precisely aimed blade. A subtle tremor ran through the room, though no one could quite identify its source. "Indeed, a matter of utmost importance." He observed their faces, noting the flicker of professional politeness that veiled their deeper avarice, their conviction that they stood on the precipice of a grand ascension. Brenda, emboldened by Fiona's apparent control of the situation, offered a saccharine grin, a gesture that managed to be both ingratiating and subtly condescending. "We've ensured the sales targets are not just met, but exceeded, Mr. Finch. Our top clients are loyal, thanks to our personalized attention." She glanced at Fiona, who gave a small, approving nod, a silent congratulation on a well-delivered line. Alastair leaned back, his gaze lingering on Fiona, then Brenda. The irony was so exquisite, it almost tasted metallic on his tongue. They prattled on, oblivious, detailing their supposed accomplishments, their faces masks of professional deference that thinly veiled their insatiable avarice. They spoke of the Emporium's prestige, its reputation, its future under his presumed ownership, all the while failing to grasp the profound seismic shift that was about to occur. They were still trapped within their carefully constructed illusion of superiority, convinced that their carefully cultivated snobbery was a virtue, not a fatal flaw. He allowed them their moment, their final unwitting performance before the curtain fell. "Unparalleled dedication," Alastair mused aloud, a hint of something sharp now present in his voice, like a diamond edge against silk. "Personalized attention. Fascinating. And what, pray tell, constitutes personalized attention in the esteemed halls of Elegance Emporium?" A subtle tightening around his eyes signaled a deeper purpose to the seemingly innocuous question. Fiona's smile tightened, sensing a shift, though she couldn't quite place its nature. A slight unease began to prickle at her, a sensation she quickly dismissed. "Why, it's about understanding our clients' needs, Mr. Finch. Their tastes, their preferences, their status." Her eyes flickered towards Brenda, a silent cue for agreement, a practiced dance of corporate affirmation. "Status," Alastair repeated, the word hanging in the air like a pronouncement, laden with an unspoken weight. "Yes, status. A very significant word in your lexicon. Wouldn't you agree?" He paused, letting the silence stretch, allowing their discomfort to bloom, a silent psychological pressure. "But tell me, Miss Albright, Miss Sterling, Have you ever considered the possibility that true status isn't always emblazoned on a designer label or announced by the glint of a platinum card? Have you ever considered that a person's true worth might reside elsewhere? His gaze was unwavering, unsettling, challenging the very foundation of their world. Fiona's brows furrowed, her professional veneer beginning to crack, revealing the brittle anxiety beneath. Mr. Finch, I assure you, Elegance Emporium caters to a very specific clientele. Our brand is built on exclusivity. Her voice held a note of defensiveness, a desperate attempt to reassert control of the narrative. Exclusivity, Alistair chuckled, a low, ominous sound that sent a shiver down Brenda's spine. Indeed. And that, Miss Albright, Miss Sterling, is precisely why this little game of ours is over. The words hung in the air, a final chilling note before the grand reveal. How had it come to this? Alistair Finch, a titan whose name was whispered with reverence in the hallowed halls of high fashion, found himself at 72, contemplating the hollowness of his own empire. He had built Finch Holdings from a humble textile mill in a small forgotten town into a global conglomerate, a beacon of luxury and impeccable taste. His designs adorned royalty and redefined elegance for decades. He had amassed a fortune, a legacy, and yet, a profound disillusionment gnawed at him. The fashion world, once a realm of artistry and passion, a sanctuary for true craftsmanship and innovative design, had devolved into a superficial masquerade. It was now a relentless pursuit of profit where true artistry and genuine human connection were sacrificed at the altar of fleeting trends and exorbitant price tags. He remembered the thrill of the first bolt of fabric, the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly draped gown, the joy in a customer's eyes when they found something that truly spoke to their soul. Those days, it seemed, were long past. He had witnessed it firsthand, the slow, insidious decay. Old friends, once fervent artisans who spoke of thread counts and natural dyes with religious fervor, had succumbed to the allure of mass production and cheap labor, their studios replaced by anonymous factories churning out mediocrity. Retailers, once curators of beauty who personally selected each piece and understood its provenance, had become mere purveyors of status symbols, their staff trained to identify and fawn over those with visible wealth, while dismissing anyone who didn't fit the mold. The soul of the industry, he felt, was dying, suffocated by the very opulence it championed. It was a cancer spreading through the very heart of what he had built. This weariness was not of age, though his years certainly weighed upon him, but of spirit. He had seen too many eager young designers, bursting with innovative ideas and fresh perspectives, crushed by corporate greed, their visions diluted and distorted for marketability. He had observed too many loyal customers, patrons for decades, treated with disdain because their appearance didn't scream millionaire, because they preferred comfort over fleeting trends, or simply because they were having an off day. The casual cruelty, the dismissive glances, the barely concealed contempt, it offended him to his core. The acquisition of Elegance Emporium, a renowned luxury store with a history as storied as his own, was meant to be the crowning jewel in his empire, a final strategic move before he considered stepping back and handing over the reins. But a persistent, gnawing doubt lingered. Was its prestige genuinely earned, a reflection of impeccable standards and respect for every patron, or was it merely a gilded cage, a facade of opulence designed to trap the unwary and extort the gullible? He had heard whispers, subtle complaints from anonymous sources, about the Emporium's cold, almost discriminatory service. These were not direct accusations, nothing actionable in a court of law, but rather a pervasive undercurrent of unease that had reached his ears through various channels, from disgruntled former employees, from patrons who felt slighted, from industry insiders who knew the true character of the management. These murmurings made him question the very integrity of the establishment he was about to absorb, and more importantly, threatened to tarnish the reputation of Finch Holdings by association. Alistair Finch had built his empire on integrity, a value he now saw eroding within the very fabric of the luxury market. He remembered his own humble beginnings, the tireless hours spent learning fabrics, understanding silhouettes, the respect he had for every seamstress and every customer, regardless of their station in life. His first customers were shopkeepers, factory workers, aspiring artists, people who saved for months to afford a single beautiful garment. He had always believed that true luxury lay not just in the product, but in the experience, in the dignity extended to every individual who walked through his doors. This was a principle he refused to see corrupted under his watch. The thought of adding a jewel to his crown that was in fact rotten at its core was anathema to him. He had considered sending in anonymous auditors, mystery shoppers with hidden cameras and meticulously crafted personas, the conventional corporate approach. But Alastair Finch was a man who preferred to see things with his own eyes, to feel the atmosphere, to gauge the true character of people without the filter of reports and metrics. He needed to experience it unfiltered as an ordinary man, an unworthy man. Only then could he truly discern the emporium's soul, or confirm its utter lack thereof. A simple report, however detailed, could never convey the sting of a dismissive glance or the chill of a condescending tone. The plan began to form meticulously, quietly, in the quiet solitude of his study overlooking the city. It was audacious, even risky, but it felt right. He summoned his most trusted confidant, his longtime personal assistant, Miss Eleanor Vance, a woman whose discretion was as legendary as her efficiency. Eleanor, a woman who had seen Alastair through countless triumphs and tribulations, who understood his every unspoken command, initially raised an eyebrow at the notion. "Mr. Finch," she had said, her voice laced with concern that barely masked her amusement, "you in a cheap suit? Surely there's a more conventional approach, one that doesn't involve you risking public humiliation." Alastair had merely smiled, a glint of his old fire in his eyes, a mischievous spark that belied his weariness. "Eleanor, my dear, convention is precisely what has brought us to this precipice. I need to see them as they truly are, stripped of the deference that my name commands. I need to be invisible, a ghost in their pristine halls, an inconvenient truth in their carefully curated world. Only then will their true colors emerge." Eleanor, ever loyal, had simply nodded, already formulating a plan to execute his unusual request. He began his preparations with an almost monastic dedication. His wardrobe, a symphony of bespoke suits from Savile Row and Parisian ateliers, cashmere coats and hand-stitched leather shoes, was temporarily abandoned, replaced by a carefully curated collection of the unremarkable. Eleanor, with a discreet sigh that suggested both professional resignation and a hint of maternal concern, sourced a series of ill-fitting, off-the-rack garments, a polyester blend suit in a dreary gray, chosen for its absolute lack of distinction, a rumpled shirt that seemed perpetually wrinkled, a tie that seemed determined to curl at the edges, refusing to lie flat. His perfectly coiffed silver hair was allowed to fall slightly unkempt, a few errant strands framing his face. His posture, usually ramrod straight, the bearing of a man accustomed to command, was subtly slouched, a slight tremor introduced to his hands, a deliberate affectation of frailty. He even practiced a slow, shuffling gait, the kind that spoke of age and perhaps a touch of infirmity, a hesitancy that would invite dismissal. He exchanged his custom-made spectacles, crafted with precision lenses, for a pair of drugstore readers slightly smudged, giving his eyes a vague, unfocused appearance. His expensive leather wallet, filled with high-limit credit cards and a driver's license that screamed Alastair Finch, was replaced with a threadbare one, filled with nothing but a few small bills and an expired discount coupon for a forgotten grocery store. No credit cards, no identification that would betray his true identity. He was to be Alastair Finch, the nobody, the forgotten old man, seemingly with an empty wallet and even emptier prospects. The disguise was not merely external, it was internal. He had to shed the mantle of power, the aura of success that had clung to him for decades like a second skin. He had to truly become the unassuming, potentially burdensome customer, the one no one wanted to waste their valuable time on. It was an exercise in humility, a deliberate embrace of vulnerability, all to expose the true character of those who served under the banner of luxury. He knew the test would be uncomfortable, perhaps even humiliating, forcing him to endure the very snobbery he despised, but the stakes were too high. The future of Elegance Emporium, and more importantly the integrity of his own legacy, depended on it. He was ready to face the truth, no matter how ugly it proved to be. The day Alastair Finch stepped into Elegance Emporium as the nobody was crisp and bright, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom he carried within him. A cool autumn breeze swept through the city, but inside the air was warm, hushed, and heavy with expectation. He pushed open the heavy glass doors, the familiar scent of expensive leather and exotic perfumes washing over him, scents that usually evoked a sense of pride and accomplishment, but today felt cloying, almost suffocating. The opulent interior, with its gleaming marble floors reflecting the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, its soaring ceilings that amplified the hushed whispers of the privileged, and its meticulously arranged displays of shimmering jewels and exquisite garments, usually filled him with pride. Today it felt like a gilded cage, a meticulously constructed stage set for a very revealing play. He moved slowly, deliberately, his ill-fitting suit a jarring note amidst the symphony of luxury. Each step was a performance, each gesture carefully calibrated. His eyes, though feigning a vague bewilderment and a touch of senile slowness, missed nothing. He noted the subtle surveillance cameras, strategically placed to capture every angle, a future testament to the unfolding drama. He observed the strategic placement of high-value items, designed to draw the eye, and the almost imperceptible hierarchy among the staff, a silent pecking order that determined who received deference and who was merely tolerated. Almost immediately, his presence registered. A subtle ripple, a barely discernible shift, went through the well-trained staff. Fiona Albright, the store's impeccably dressed manager, stood near the entrance, her posture radiating an air of controlled authority, a silent sentinel guarding the gates of luxury. Her discerning gaze swept over Alastair, lingered for a fraction of a second on his worn suit, the scuffed shoes, the cheap tie, and then solidified into a mask of polite indifference, a practiced dismissal that spoke volumes without a single word. Beside her, Brenda Sterling, a lead sales associate with a penchant for judging customers by their labels, offered a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. Her eyes, sharper than Fiona's in their assessment of potential commission, darted from Alastair's threadbare cuffs to his unkempt hair. The verdict was clearly rendered: no sale. He registered their reactions, filing them away, each an undeniable piece of evidence. Alastair began his slow perusal, feigning an interest in a display of diamond necklaces, their facets catching the light, winking with unattainable brilliance. He knew the value of each stone, the craftsmanship of each setting, having commissioned many of them himself over the decades, but he pretended to squint, as if trying to decipher a foreign language written in precious gems. Fiona and Brenda, meanwhile, were far from subtle in making their disdain evident. Fiona's voice was a low murmur, just loud enough to carry in the hushed elegance of the store, a deliberate maneuver to ensure Alastair overheard. Perhaps Mr. Henderson needs assistance in the watch department. He's been waiting. It was a clear directive, a dismissal disguised as a task, designed to draw Brenda away from the undesirable customer without explicitly acknowledging his presence. Brenda nodded, a tight, knowing smile on her lips, but before she left, she cast another withering glance at Alastair, her lips pursed in a silent judgment. As Alastair shuffled towards the designer handbag section, a place where fortunes changed hands with a flick of a credit card, Brenda returned, her path deliberately intersecting his. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her tone flat, devoid of genuine warmth, a rote question delivered without expectation of a positive answer. Her eyes were already scanning the entrance, looking for more promising targets, for the glint of an expensive watch or the shimmer of a designer scarf. "Oh," Alastair feigned a hesitant mumble, a slight tremble in his voice. "Just looking. These are very fine, aren't they?" He gestured vaguely at a crocodile skin tote, knowing its price tag could fund a small country for a year. He watched her reaction, registering the subtle shift in her expression. Brenda's sigh was almost imperceptible, a tiny expulsion of air that nonetheless conveyed immense irritation. A silent exclamation of wasted time. Indeed, sir. They are from our latest collection. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our accessories department? We have some lovely scarves on sale. The suggestion was a thinly veiled attempt to steer him towards the cheaper, less prominent items, or ideally towards the exit, away from the expensive merchandise he clearly couldn't afford and might, in her mind, damage. Alistair merely smiled weakly, a benign, almost childlike expression that belied the keen intellect behind his eyes. No, these are quite interesting. He deliberately picked up a handbag, feeling the supple leather, examining the stitching, appreciating the craftsmanship despite the circumstances. It was a well-crafted piece, no doubt, but the sales associate's attitude tarnished its beauty, rendering it less appealing than a simple canvas bag presented with genuine warmth. Fiona, observing from a discreet distance, decided to intervene more directly, her patience wearing thin. She approached Alistair, her smile polished but cold like a porcelain mask. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you finding everything to your liking?" Her tone implied the opposite, a subtle challenge rather than an invitation. "Everything is exquisite," Alistair said, meeting her gaze with an innocent stare, his eyes conveying a feigned awe. "Indeed," Fiona replied, her voice saccharine yet laced with a sharp edge. "However, these items are quite delicate. We do ask our customers to be mindful when handling them, especially without specific intent to purchase." The implication was clear. He was a looky-loo, a time-waster, a potential hazard to their precious merchandise, not a serious buyer. "Are you looking for anything in particular today, sir? Perhaps a gift?" Alistair deliberated, allowing a moment of feigned confusion, as if grappling with a complex philosophical problem. "A gift, perhaps. Or for myself. One never knows, does one?" He offered a vague, almost childlike shrug, a gesture designed to exasperate. Fiona's patience wore thin, a vein throbbing almost imperceptibly at her temple. "Perhaps I could direct you to our less exclusive items, sir? We have a lovely selection of small leather goods near the register. Or perhaps a tie. They are quite suitable for everyday wear." The insult was subtle, yet stinging, designed to put him in his place, to convey his perceived inadequacy. Her words implied he was out of place, that he belonged in a different, cheaper section, or better yet, out of the store entirely. He absorbed the humiliation, noting every nuance of her dismissiveness. He had expected this, of course. Yet the raw, unfiltered snobbery was still striking, a visceral confirmation of his deepest fears for the industry. They saw only a burden, a potential waste of their valuable time, an anomaly that disrupted their carefully curated tableau of wealth and privilege. He made a mental note of their exact phrasing, the nuances of their dismissal, the subtle ways they conveyed contempt. He wandered towards the fine jewelry section, where another scene unfolded, a stark contrast to his own experience. A middle-aged couple, impeccably dressed and adorned with tasteful but undeniably expensive accessories, entered. Fiona and Brenda converged on them like sharks scenting blood, their smiles suddenly genuine, their voices warm and deferential, their eagerness almost palpable. "Mr. and Mrs. Dubois, so wonderful to see you again. We have just received the most exquisite sapphire pendant that I think you'll simply adore, Mrs. Dubois." Alistair, still shuffling slowly nearby, was completely ignored, a ghost in their midst, his presence erased by the scent of potential commission. He watched as Brenda practically bowed, holding open a display case for Mrs. Dubois, her eyes sparkling with commission-driven enthusiasm, her every movement radiating subservience. The stark difference was a clear indictment. Alistair moved on, feigning interest in an antique watch display, his mind replaying the interactions. He paused, his hand hovering over a vintage Patek Philippe, a piece he recognized as being from a collection he personally knew well. "This one," he murmured, loud enough to be heard by a passing Brenda, who was rushing back to the Dubois couple. "It has a certain gravitas." Brenda merely glanced over her shoulder, her mind clearly elsewhere, already hurrying to assist the well-heeled woman carrying several designer shopping bags. "Yes, sir. Very nice. If you need any assistance, just ask one of the floor staff." Her dismissiveness was almost comical, a fleeting automated response. She didn't even pause. Her focus was entirely on the high-value targets, blind to anything else. The sharp contrast to their cold dismissal came from an unexpected source, a quiet beacon in the opulent wilderness. As Alistair stood near a display of bespoke menswear, his gaze lingering on a particularly fine cashmere suit, a young man, perhaps in his early 20s, approached him. He was tall, slender, and wore his standard-issue Elegance Emporium uniform with a quiet dignity, a uniform that seemed to fit him better than it did most, despite its generic design. His name tag read, Leo Davies, Sales Associate. "Good afternoon, sir," Leo said, his voice gentle and respectful, a genuine smile gracing his lips. There was no condescension, no assessment of his attire, only a simple human welcome that cut through the manufactured politeness of the store like a breath of fresh air. "May I be of any assistance? Are you looking for something in particular? Or simply enjoying the craftsmanship?" His eyes held a curious, open warmth, a stark contrast to the calculating glances he had received all day. Alistair, caught off guard by the unexpected warmth, almost dropped his feigned persona. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face, quickly masked. "Oh," he stammered slightly, "just admiring. These fabrics are quite something." He gestured vaguely at a cashmere overcoat, its softness inviting. Leo's eyes lit up, not with the gleam of commission, but with genuine passion. "They are, aren't they? This particular piece is from the Loro Piana collection. The cashmere is sourced from the finest herds in Inner Mongolia, hand-combed for incredible softness and warmth. The lining is pure silk, allowing it to drape beautifully." He spoke with an infectious enthusiasm, not like a salesman trying to make a quota, but like an artisan deeply proud of his craft, sharing a cherished secret. He didn't press for a sale, didn't inquire about Alistair's budget. He simply shared his knowledge, his passion, his love for the product's inherent beauty. "And the cut?" Alistair prompted, intrigued, finding himself genuinely drawn into the conversation. "The cut is classic yet modern," Leo continued, his hands moving gracefully to illustrate the lines of the garment. "It's designed to be timeless, to truly last. You see here the hand stitching on the lapel? That's a mark of true quality, something machine-made simply can't replicate. It adds to the garment's longevity and its character." He paused, then gestured to a nearby comfortable armchair. "Please, sir, feel free to sit. Sometimes, it's best to appreciate these pieces at your leisure." He then discreetly brought a small glass of water, placing it on a nearby table, an act of thoughtful consideration Alistair hadn't experienced all day. Leo wasn't just reciting facts, he was telling a story. He spoke of the tailors in Italy who brought these designs to life, of the heritage behind the brands, of the philosophy of true luxury. Not as an ostentatious display, but as an appreciation for beauty, quality, and enduring value. He treated Alistair not as a potential burden, but as a fellow connoisseur, a curious mind and equal regardless of his threadbare suit. Alistair observed Leo carefully throughout his visit. The young man carried himself with a quiet dignity, a stark contrast to the performative professionalism of Fiona and Brenda. He noticed the slight wear on Leo's uniform shoes, the subtle signs of a young man working hard, perhaps even struggling, yet carrying a profound inner kindness and unshakable decency. He had seen Brenda scowl at Leo earlier when the young man had offered to help a customer carrying a cumbersome package, a task Brenda clearly deemed beneath her. There was an unspoken understanding among the junior staff that Leo was too soft, too nice to make it big in their cutthroat environment, a sentiment Alistair had overheard from a hurried, hushed conversation between two other sales associates. Later, Alistair feigned a brief spell of dizziness, leaning against a display case, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He wanted to push the test further, to see who would react when there was no immediate benefit. Fiona, who was nearby, merely glanced over, her expression unreadable, before turning back to her clipboard, prioritizing her inventory check over a seemingly infirm old man. Brenda, passing by, offered a quick, dismissive "Are you all right, sir?" without breaking her stride, her voice devoid of true concern. It was Leo who rushed over, his face etched with genuine concern, his uniform rustling with his hurried movement. "Sir, are you well? Can I get you anything? A chair? Some water? Shall I call for assistance?" He helped Alistair to a comfortable bench, his hand steady and supportive, guiding him with gentle strength. He waited patiently, not moving until Alistair assured him he was fine, his presence a comforting anchor. "You're very kind, young man," Alistair said, his voice raspy with feigned weakness, but his eyes assessing, penetrating the young man's earnest gaze. Leo smiled, a genuine, unaffected warmth radiating from him. "It's no trouble, sir. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter why they're here." He didn't say no matter who they are or no matter their budget, but no matter why they're here. It spoke volumes. It was not about profit, but about decency, about a fundamental human kindness that transcended class and material wealth. This pure, unadulterated kindness, untainted by materialism or the relentless pursuit of commission, was the very light Alistair had been searching for. It confirmed his deepest suspicions about Fiona and Brenda. Their avarice, their superficiality, their utter lack of empathy, their unsuitability to represent his brand. But it also illuminated the true potential of the store, a potential that lay not in its opulent merchandise or its inflated prices, but in the integrity of individuals like Leo. This encounter, this brief, profound interaction with a young man who saw beyond the threadbare suit, solidified Alistair's resolve. The changes he would soon implement would be drastic, decisive, and entirely merited. The stage was set, the players had revealed their true colors, and the time for the grand unveiling was fast approaching. The boardroom hummed with a nervous energy that Alistair found quite amusing. The acquisition of Elegance Emporium was set to be formally signed, the culmination of months of legal wrangling and financial negotiations. Fiona Albright, radiant in a new designer suit, a vibrant crimson that seemed to scream ambition, sat opposite Alistair, her face a mask of confident expectation, her eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph. Brenda Sterling, equally polished in a sharp navy ensemble, sat beside her, practically vibrating with anticipated triumph, a constant, almost imperceptible bouncing of her knee under the table. They believed this was their moment, their ascent into the upper echelons of Finch Holdings. They envisioned promotions, bonuses, perhaps even a seat on some minor committee within the vast Finch empire. The legal teams, stiff and formal in their dark suits, had already laid out the necessary documents, thick stacks of paper bound with silk ribbons. The table was adorned with gleaming water pitchers and crisp white stationery. Alistair's own legal counsel, Mr. Edward Thorne, a man whose stern demeanor masked a keen intellect and an unwavering loyalty, sat silently beside him, a thick leather briefcase resting on the floor beside his chair, its contents a secret weapon. "Well, Mr. Finch," Fiona purred, her voice dripping with an almost theatrical grace, a performance honed over years of managing demanding clientele, "we are truly honored by this acquisition. Elegance Emporium will undoubtedly flourish under your esteemed leadership. Brenda and I are prepared to dedicate ourselves fully to this new chapter." She cast a triumphant glance at Brenda, who nodded vigorously, a mirror image of her manager's ambition. Alistair merely smiled, a slow, knowing smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, a smile that conveyed a hidden agenda. "Indeed, Ms. Albright. A new chapter, certainly. One that will be written with a very different hand, I assure you." A subtle shift in his tone, a steel beneath the velvet, caused Fiona's smile to waver slightly. Fiona's smile wavered further. There was an unsettling quality to Alistair's gaze, a sharpness she hadn't noticed before, a glint that seemed to see right through her polished facade, through the layers of her practiced charm. "Pardon me, Mr. Finch. Before we sign," Alistair continued, his voice now gaining a quiet authority that filled the room, silencing the nervous hum. "I believe it is only fitting that we address a matter of personnel. Integrity, you see, is paramount to me. It is the very bedrock upon which Finch Holdings was built, and it is the standard by which all future endeavors will be judged." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle, observing the subtle shifts in their posture, the growing unease. Fiona's brow furrowed, a tiny crease appearing between her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. Brenda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her bouncing knees stilled. A subtle ripple of unease spread through the room, catching even the impassive legal teams off guard. "Over the past few days," Alistair began, his voice taking on a gravely serious tone, each word carefully articulated, "I have had the distinct pleasure of observing the operations of Elegance Emporium firsthand." He paused, his eyes sweeping over Fiona and Brenda, who now looked genuinely perplexed, a hint of suspicion dawning in their eyes. They exchanged quick, furtive glances, confusion etched on their faces. Not as Alistair Finch, the acquiring CEO, but as a prospective customer. An unassuming one. An ordinary man in an ordinary, perhaps even rather shabby suit. Fiona's eyes widened imperceptibly, a faint flicker of recognition quickly suppressed. Brenda gasped, a small involuntary sound, a barely audible intake of breath. A flicker of recognition, a dawning horror, began to cross their faces, draining them of color. They remembered the frail, shabbily dressed old man, the one they had dismissed, condescended to, tried to usher out. No, it couldn't be. The thought was too absurd, too impossible, too utterly humiliating to contemplate. "I believe," Alistair continued, enjoying their rapidly escalating discomfort, the slow realization of their grave error, "you two were quite attentive to this particular customer. You offered him scarves for everyday wear, directed him to less exclusive items, and subtly but very clearly made it known that his presence was unwelcome." His voice remained calm, almost conversational, making his words all the more chilling, stripping them of any emotional defense. Fiona found her voice, though it was now a strained whisper barely audible. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly. "Mr. Finch, I don't understand. Are you implying?" "I am not implying, Ms. Albright," Alistair interjected, his voice hardening, becoming a steel trap, leaving no room for argument, no space for denial. I am stating that the man you treated with such disdain, such casual contempt, was I, Alistair Finch." The revelation hung in the air, a thunderclap in the pristine silence of the boardroom, shattering the carefully constructed illusion of decorum. Fiona's face went utterly ashen, her meticulously applied makeup suddenly stark against her drained complexion, her lips parting in a silent gasp. Brenda's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and utter terror, a primal fear of exposure. The legal teams exchanged bewildered glances, their poker faces momentarily slipping into expressions of stunned surprise. Mr. Thorne, however, remained impassive, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He had known Alistair's plan from the beginning, a silent co-conspirator in this elegant execution. You were the old man in the gray suit?" Brenda stammered, her voice barely audible, a hoarse whisper of shattered pride. "The very same," Alistair confirmed, a cool, almost surgical precision in his tone. "And I assure you, Miss Sterling, every whispered comment, every dismissive glance, every calculated attempt to make me feel insignificant was noted. Every moment of your blatant prejudice and appalling lack of basic human decency was recorded, not merely in my memory, but in a very detailed report prepared by my personal assistant, Miss Eleanor Vance, who has been reviewing the store's internal surveillance footage and cross-referencing it with my meticulously kept notes." He nodded to Mr. Thorne, who calmly opened his briefcase and produced a thick binder, its pages filled with damning evidence. "Indeed, Mr. Finch. I have here a comprehensive dossier outlining Ms. Albright's and Ms. Sterling's consistent patterns of discriminatory behavior, poor customer service, and disregard for the fundamental principles of respectful engagement, all meticulously documented over the period of your assessment and cross-referenced with previous anonymous complaints we received over the past several months. Fiona looked utterly devastated, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her, her eyes darting frantically around the room, searching for an escape. This is outrageous. A trick. You can't, she cried, her voice cracking. Oh, but I can, Ms. Albright, Alistair interjected, his voice now a steel trap, leaving no room for argument or appeal. And I will. I acquire Elegance Emporium today, yes, but I also acquire the right to dismantle its rotten core and rebuild it on principles of genuine respect and true luxury. Principles that you clearly do not embody. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing, holding their stunned eyes captive. You saw a man of no consequence, Ms. Albright. A burden. A waste of your valuable time. You saw only the cheap suit, not the man within. And in doing so you revealed the true ugly face of your operation. A face that is utterly unacceptable to Finch Holdings. He paused, letting the full weight of his words sink in, allowing them to comprehend the depth of their miscalculation. However, he continued, a slight softening in his tone, a flicker of something akin to hope, there was one exception. One individual who, despite his apparent low rank, shone through with genuine kindness, respect, and an authentic passion for the products he represented. A young man named Leo Davies. Fiona and Brenda exchanged horrified glances, their eyes wide with disbelief. Leo? The quiet, earnest young man they barely noticed, the one they often chided for being too friendly or not aggressive enough in sales. The one they dismissed as lacking the killer instinct for luxury retail? Mr. Thorne, Alistair commanded, his voice resonating with finality, please inform Ms. Albright and Ms. Sterling that their services are no longer required, effective immediately. Their employment with Elegance Emporium, and by extension with Finch Holdings, is hereby terminated. Furthermore, due to the documented pattern of misconduct, any severance packages or recommendations are rescinded. Their actions have forfeited any such considerations. The color drained from Fiona's face, leaving it ghostly white, her crimson suit now a harsh, condemning contrast. Brenda began to hyperventilate, clutching at her throat, a choked sob escaping her lips. Their dreams of advancement, of continued luxury, shattered in an instant, reduced to ashes. The irony was palpable. Their greed and snobbery, meant to elevate them, had instead led to their spectacular downfall, exposed by the very man they had disdained. As for Leo Davies, Alistair announced, his voice ringing with a new authoritative clarity, a promise of a better future, he will be promoted to assistant manager of Elegance Emporium, effective immediately. His dedication, his integrity, and his inherent understanding of what true luxury service means are precisely what this establishment needs to thrive. He then looked towards Mr. Thorne, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. And please arrange for a significant bonus to be wired to his account by the end of the day. A token of appreciation for reminding me that decency still exists, even in the most unexpected places. The room was silent, save for Fiona's muffled gasp and Brenda's choked sob, the sound of shattered ambition. The masks had fallen, and the true nature of their characters had been exposed, not by a grand public spectacle, but by the quiet, observant gaze of the very man they had so carelessly dismissed. The acquisition would proceed, but not as they had ever envisioned. It would begin with a profound cleansing, a refounding on principles long forgotten. The fallout was swift and merciless for Fiona Albright and Brenda Sterling. The news of their immediate termination, coupled with the scandalous revelation of Alistair Finch's undercover operation, spread through the luxury retail circuit like wildfire. Their reputations, once carefully cultivated facades of polished professionalism and discerning taste, crumbled into dust. The industry, small and incestuous, quickly branded them as pariahs, their names whispered as a cautionary tale. No luxury brand wanted to be associated with individuals who had so spectacularly failed the integrity test of a titan like Alistair Finch. Their network of contacts, once a source of endless opportunities and lavish invitations, evaporated overnight. Calls went unanswered, emails unreturned, their former allies suddenly too busy to acknowledge their existence. Fiona, whose life had revolved around brand names and social climbing, around designer labels and exclusive events, found herself utterly adrift. Her designer wardrobe, once a symbol of her status, her armor against the world, now felt like a cruel mockery, a collection of empty promises. She struggled to find even a mid-level position in any reputable retail establishment, her name now synonymous with scandal and snobbery. Her lavish apartment, her expensive car, her meticulously curated lifestyle, all were financed by the high salary and generous commission she had once commanded. With no income, she faced the humiliating prospect of liquidating her assets, her carefully constructed world collapsing brick by painful brick. She had believed that her outward appearance and her ability to identify and cater to the wealthy were her greatest assets. She learned with bitter irony that they were her undoing. The very superficiality she embraced had devoured her, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. Brenda Sterling fared no better. Her smirking arrogance and judgmental nature, once tolerated as part of her aggressive sales technique, were now seen as unforgivable flaws, glaring character deficiencies. Her attempts to secure new employment were met with polite but firm rejections, the veiled references to cultural fit and team dynamics thinly masking the true reason. She descended into a spiral of self-pity and resentment, railing against the unfairness of a world that dared to judge her based on her unfortunate interaction with Alastair Finch. She lost her apartment, her car, and most of her prized possessions, forced to rely on the strained charity of distant relatives, a profound humiliation for someone who had so prized independence and material display. The material wealth she so desperately coveted, and for which she had sacrificed her humanity, had become a phantom, leaving her with nothing but the crushing weight of her own moral bankruptcy. They had spent their lives worshipping at the altar of money and status, only to discover that true power lay not in accumulation, but in principled action, in the quiet dignity of one man's integrity. Meanwhile, Leo Davies' life underwent a transformation so profound, he initially believed it was an elaborate dream, too good to be true. The day after the boardroom meeting, he arrived at Elegance Emporium, preparing for another day of humble service, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. He found his manager, Fiona Albright, gone and Brenda Sterling conspicuously absent, their names removed from the staff roster. In their place, a representative from Finch Holdings, a stern but kind woman named Miss Eleanor Vance, was waiting for him, her expression unreadable but her eyes holding a glint of genuine warmth. "Mr. Davies," she had said, her voice formal yet warm, a subtle blend of corporate authority and personal reassurance, "Mr. Finch wishes to see you immediately. He has been most impressed by your conduct." Leo, bewildered and a little nervous, his mind racing with possibilities, followed her to a private office he had never before been allowed to enter. There, Alastair Finch, no longer in his ill-fitting suit but in an impeccably tailored one, awaited him. He smiled, a genuine benevolent smile that reached his eyes, erasing the memory of the frail old man. "Leo," Alastair began, his voice warm and steady, "I believe we have much to discuss, starting with your new position as assistant manager of Elegance Emporium." Leo's jaw dropped, his mind struggling to process the words. "Assistant? Manager? I don't understand." A rush of disbelief, followed by a surge of overwhelming emotion, threatened to choke him. Alastair recounted the story of his undercover visit, detailing Fiona and Brenda's deplorable behavior, and contrasting it vividly with Leo's unwavering kindness and professionalism, his genuine warmth and respect. "You, Leo, are the embodiment of what true luxury retail should be. Not about snobbery but about genuine respect, passion, and service. You treated an old man in a cheap suit with the same dignity you would offer a king. That, Leo, is priceless." He saw the tears welling in the young man's eyes, tears of shock, relief, and profound gratitude. The promotion was merely the beginning. Within days, the significant bonus Alastair had mentioned materialized in Leo's bank account. an amount so staggering it brought tears to his eyes, enough to change his family's life. It was enough to pay off his struggling parents' mortgage, clearing a burden that had weighed on them for years, to clear his own student debts that had seemed insurmountable, and finally, afford him the opportunity to pursue his passion for bespoke tailoring, a dream he had long deferred due to financial constraints. Alastair, impressed by Leo's quiet ambition and integrity, recognizing a kindred spirit, even offered to sponsor a scholarship for him to study at a prestigious fashion institute in Milan, with the understanding that Leo would return to a higher leadership role within Finch Holdings upon completion. Leo, once an overlooked and undervalued sales associate, found himself thrust into a world of unexpected opportunity and recognition. He embraced his new role with humility and fierce dedication, transforming Elegance Emporium from within. He implemented new training programs focused on empathy and genuine customer service, emphasizing treating every person who walked through the door with dignity, regardless of perceived wealth. He championed ethical sourcing and celebrated craftsmanship, infusing the store with the very soul Alastair had sought, a return to the values upon which true luxury was built. He proved Alastair's faith in him was well placed, and the Emporium, under his genuine leadership, began to truly flourish, regaining its prestigious reputation, this time built on a foundation of integrity, respect, and authentic passion. Weeks turned into months, and Elegance Emporium, under Leo Davies's passionate leadership, experienced a renaissance. Its reputation, once tinged with whispers of snobbery and elitism, now gleamed with renewed respect and genuine admiration. Alastair Finch, observing from a comfortable distance, felt a profound sense of peace. He had not only saved a valuable asset but, more importantly, had reaffirmed his belief that integrity and kindness, even in the most cutthroat of industries, would always find their reward. He often visited the Emporium, no longer in disguise, but as its esteemed owner, and he would watch Leo interact with customers, rich or poor, famous or unknown, with the same unwavering respect and genuine enthusiasm, offering the same detailed knowledge and thoughtful consideration he had shown Alastair himself. It was a sight that filled Alastair with a quiet satisfaction he hadn't felt in years, a profound sense of purpose fulfilled. The weariness that had once settled in his bones had dissipated, replaced by the invigorating energy of a legacy redeemed, a belief reaffirmed. The story of Alastair Finch and his undercover mission became a whispered legend within the luxury world, a cautionary tale for the arrogant and an inspiring testament for the empathetic. It served as a powerful reminder that true character reveals itself not in the brilliance of midday sun, but in the depths of shadows, when one believes no one is watching, when the facade of professionalism can be dropped. In a world often blinded by superficiality and driven by material gain, the story of Elegance Emporium's transformation echoed a timeless truth, that genuine kindness, offered without expectation, is a currency far more valuable than gold, and that those who possess it are truly the wealthiest among us, destined not just for personal triumph, but to illuminate the path for others, guiding the industry back to its soul. If you found Alastair's clever plan and the unfolding drama at Elegance Emporium as captivating as we did, then you're in the right place. We regularly share stories of hidden identities, surprising reveals, and powerful life lessons right here on our channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next compelling tale. What was the most surprising moment for you in Alastair's story? And if you were Alastair, what's one thing you would have done differently? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts and engaging with our amazing community.